Okay, sorry, hang on. I have to go back to my old format, but that's okay. So I'll call the November 12th, 2020 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting to order due to circumstances associated with the coronavirus pandemic and pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, which declared New Hampshire to be in a state of emergency due to novel coronavirus COVID-19. An emergency exists as defined by RSA 91-A:2, paragraph 3 for the November 12th, 2020 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting. Board members who are unable to attend in person may participate via electronic communication and will be deemed to be present at the meeting for purposes of quorum and voting. Note that for the meeting, my choice of headgear is only for the cold temperatures in my office and nothing else. And we should do a roll call introduction. Chair Bob Strobel, and each board member can announce their name.
Vice Chair Lee Baldwin.
Tim Jandiver.
Go ahead, Hal.
Hal Kreider.
Okay. And for voting, all members present are designated. Okay. We have 3 continued cases tonight. First up is case 20-5, Joseph and Marion Lovely, and owners J. Christopher and Deborah Whiting. I believe we have an applicant or the owner present. So I'll open case 20-5. We've already started that last month. Have we had any communications on this case from
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I gotta find my notes here. Okay. We haven't had any communications. Then we should be.
Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
I believe you read the abutters list last time.
I did.
I think for the purposes of tonight, since we haven't received any additional comments, a quick open and close of the public comment, just in case somebody who's logged in tonight is here to speak to this case.
Okay.
And then I had a very short list of conditions of approval for this one.
Exactly. That's what I was finding was my notes on the case. They got buried under some school stuff. Okay, so for purposes of tonight, I will open the public comment section of the hearing. If you are present in the meeting or on the phone and would like to comment on this case, please do so now by getting my attention. Seeing and hearing none, assuming Ms. Huntington is waiting for another case, I will close public comment on case 20-5. Okay, going through the list, I believe we addressed regional impact last time.
So I think the only thing that is still outstanding are to read the conditions of approval. I'm
Right.
recommending prior to the signing of plans, 1, provide certification of monument installation as required by section 3.06 of the subdivision regulations. Number 2, deliver 3 signed and stamped copies of the plan and 1 signed and stamped Mylar to the town for signature. And then a condition subsequent post-signature, record the plat with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year of this decision. That's simply a condition subsequent because no building is proposed related to this application.
Any questions on the proposed conditions of approval from the board?
What was the last one?
The last one is a condition subsequent that the applicant record the plat with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds within 1 year of this decision. We would normally have that be a condition prior to issuance of a building permit, but since no building permit's going to go out related to this application, we're just leaving it that it has to happen within a year. Otherwise, they would be in violation of their subdivision approval.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And just to double check before we move into a motion, the applicant or the owner, Mr. Whiting, your understanding of the conditions proposed?
Yeah, well, can I get something in writing or email, or so that I make sure that I can check it off and make sure everything's done?
Yep,
You'll
you'll
get
get
a
a notice of decision within a week.
Okay, great.
I always just like to check with the applicant before we go into motions that they understand and don't have any questions. Okay, I would consider a motion for approval based on the conditions just read.
Motion to approve with conditions, 1, 2, 3.
Second.
Thank you. So motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion on the approval motion. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Al, you're muted.
You're still muted.
Are you in
yes.
Word and pressing spacebar?
Yeah, it doesn't help, does it? I did the same thing last meeting, didn't I?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, at least I'm consistent. Yes.
okay. Tim,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. So you're approved. 20-5, you'll get a notice of decision letter from town staff, usually within a week.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next up is case 20-6, Ray Properties LLC of Northwood. And do we have the applicant or representative here?
Yes. It's muted. I unmuted it.
Is that Ms. Huntington, who is the applicant?
Well, no.
Not different case.
We can hear you.
You can hear me okay?
Yep.
So, Catherine Huntington, my daughter, I'm using her computer. This is Yvette DeVoe.
Okay. I figured I'd catch you on at least one of the 3 cases tonight.
This is my first Zoom meeting, so bear with me. I don't know what to.
You're fine. Okay. We can see you, we can hear you. That's the important part. So, okay, I believe we opened this last time. Have we received any communication from anyone of the public or abutters on this case?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
Okay. So I will open public comment on 20-6 Ray Properties. If you are present in the meeting and you have something to say, please let me know, get my attention somehow. Hearing none, I will close public comment. And actually, Ms. Huntington, you said you were mother of Yvette DeVoe? Or,
No, this is Yvette
Sorry.
DeVoe. I'm using my daughter Catherine's computer, so her name comes up.
okay, now I get it. Now I get it. Thank you. Sorry. My apologies. I'll make a note. Okay. Okay. So we have, I believe we did regional impact.
We did. So for this one, we have a waiver request that
Exactly.
essentially boils down to requesting a waiver that the plan be drawn to scale. I think regardless of whether we choose to grant that waiver, I would like to see, some minor handwritten amendments just to make sure the title block information is on the final version that eventually goes in the file. As I mentioned last time, the plan that has been amended and we have a copy of is basically the previously approved site plan for this file with some hand-drawn amendments. So to me, it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other as to whether you feel that a waiver is necessary, in which case I think just approving a waiver that the plan doesn't need to be drawn to scale, or whether, since it's already basically been accepted as a site plan, whether you don't even think a waiver is required. So I leave that to the board procedurally as to whether you'd prefer to approve a waiver or prefer to find that no waiver is necessary. We've taken care of regional impact. Since we have a prior case on this lot for case 19-9, for which the conditions were never met, I would like to see a written confirmation by the applicant that they'd like to revoke that prior approval, since this has changed hands, just so we can close that case out and get it off our books. And then we also briefly discussed the issue of septic, and my understanding is that the applicant is considering the correct number of seats associated with this cafe, and whether that would require a new septic plan anyway. So I'll leave it to the applicant to fill you in more on that.
Okay.
I dropped off a new septic design this morning to the town hall and spoke with the building inspector. Turns out that the notes that I had received from the town after the last meeting said that basically it was okay as long as we met the state requirements. The state is mandating a minimum 1,000 gallon exterior grease trap, basically. So since we have to do that, we decided to just go ahead and redo the whole septic, which will allow us to have more seats than the 9. We had based the request for the 9 seats on the existing septic, but now we're going to have to do a whole new one. So I did submit that and got that signed by the building inspector today. It's being submitted to the state. Chances are we're probably not going to be doing that until spring at this point because the cold weather is upon us. So I'll have to redo somehow. I'm not sure if I have to redo or just amend the application that we submitted previously to the new numbers. But in the interim, I did speak with the building inspector earlier and Ms. Smith there about opening up the office in the front now without having to wait for the whole septic and the cafe to be opened in the spring. And the building inspector had indicated that since we if we had the new septic approval on file, once it's state approved, we'd have that as the backup in case the existing septic fails. So they didn't see an issue with that. I'm just not sure how to proceed since I had combined them both into the one application. I'm not sure if you need me now to do something different.
I'm thinking offhand that exactly as the building inspector said, and I'm bringing this up for discussion. It's not a decision. Please, for no one in the board or applicant, think of it that way. Is that the obtaining of a septic permit design or an approved septic design permit is a condition of approval. That is not a problem. How you're muted.
Just to
I think that
clarify,
covers it.
we cannot hold up the application just on the grounds that we're missing a state permit. So it would be common practice to require that approval by the state as a condition of approval. I think, Ms. DeVoe, do you know exactly how many seats you're now proposing?
I believe it's 20. No, I'm sorry. No, 15.
15 seats.
Yes. With the new septic. So the state was fine with the 9 seats that we initially submitted. It was just that we needed the exterior grease trap. So again, that was on us to decide that since we were going to do that, we might as well just redo it and do it right. And so that's where the additional are going to come from.
I'm just wondering about parking then.
I'm sorry?
I'm just wondering about if you have enough for parking for that many seats.
There's acreage there. There's tons of parking spaces.
But
There's basically
we base it on the calculations of number of seats, and I don't have.
Again, I don't know if you want me to do 2 separate applications now, one for the office and one for the cafe, or if I can just amend what's there once the approval comes in. I don't really know, but we would like to just open the office now because it's kind of ready to go and not have to wait till springtime comes to do the cafe as well. So I don't know if I can get like an approval on the office now and then the other is pending. I don't really know how it works.
Bob, question.
Go ahead, Hal.
Was there not a real estate office in there already?
I believe there is.
And if that was already in there, does she need approval for an office at this point?
Well, if it's not changing, it's on the plan as office space. There was, to my recollection, an office in there currently. The biggest change is going from essentially a 3-unit to a 2-unit. I'll put it in air quotes. Well, actually, really the only change between that you're doing, if you want to summarize it, is that the 1 unit is becoming seating for the cafe.
Correct.
The other, because the kitchen, you can think of it, the kitchen facility is already there, or the restaurant facility is already there, the office is already there. I forget what the other space was, but or it was used by.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
if I could just add 2 things regarding first the use.
Yep.
The building has not been used for a period of time, and I think it was determined that the uses that were there previously are now considered abandoned.
Okay.
The matter of fact, the prior owner sent a letter to the town saying that it was his intention to demolish the buildings or demo them. So that's an intent to abandon. That's why she applied for the 2 uses, even though 1 was already there. The other thing I just wanted to add is there is overflow parking on that site that has been used.
Yes.
In the past. I don't know. I don't have the drawing in front of me, but.
Well, I have the drawing in the area. The only, I don't even want to go so far as to call it a sticking point, because it's not really a sticking point. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 9 spaces, parking spaces alongside the building indicated, but there is parking, proposed parking at the tree line indicated. I think as long as we have on the drawing enough spaces indicated for all the uses that you're applying for, we're good. You know, so even, but if you're looking at, well, two things actually, now that I look at it, proposed cafe seating of 9, if you're upping that to 15 based on a new septic, I think, well, just my feeling, speaking for as one board member, that I would want that updated on the plan. And if you're updating it there on the plan, then it might be just while you're there, go in and draw some additional parking spaces to cover, so that we know at least you have, you know, the number that are needed. And I think James, the town staff, could give us that calculation easily.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could make a suggestion. So I pulled up the parking calculations. So we require 1 space per 2 seats based on maximum seating capacity. So a maximum capacity of 15 would be 7.5. We'd round up to 8, plus 1 parking space for each 2 employees on a shift of largest employment. So if you're only going to have 2 people working in the cafe at any given time, that would get you 1 parking space, so you're up to 9. Then we would also need to accommodate the office, which is either 1 space per 325 square feet of gross floor area, or if they're not expecting regular patronage by the general public, 1 space for each 1.5 business occupants, which is really weird that we go to 1.5 people for a parking space. But so we can work through that together. I think we can definitely, there are definitely ways that we could structure an approval and conditions of approval that would get us to a sort of 2-stage opening. For example, if the whole purpose of the septic redesign and renovation is to support the cafe, we would typically require that septic plan to be approved by the state prior to the signing of plans. But if the board looked at, okay, the only thing that is going to be happening before that comes back is an office that could have been accommodated by the existing septic, we could move that condition of approval for an approved septic design from prior to signing of plans to prior to occupancy of the cafe, which would mean that there would be an approved plan ready to sign, and then we would just need the designs back before the cafe could open. I think that I would feel a little bit more comfortable if the board had the opportunity to look at the septic plans that were submitted, and if I had the opportunity to look at the septic plans that were submitted, and if I were able to, you know, write up these conditions beforehand. So I think I would feel marginally more comfortable if we continued for another meeting and finalized it at that meeting once everybody had a chance to look over everything, rather than writing conditions on the fly. But if the board really wants to move forward tonight, I'll start working on something right now.
Well, our next meeting is next Wednesday, or next Thursday.
Yeah, so that would be a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And the septic design is at your office now. The building inspector signed it this morning, so it's just now being submitted to the state. So it already has town approval.
Okay. Not that we town doesn't approve it anyway. It's all done by the state, but it's on file. That's the important thing. And just to circle back to parking, by my math, the cafe would take, I think, what was it, James, 9?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
9, 'cause we were
that
7.5.
probably puts us at like 10 or 11 parking spaces for the entire site for all uses.
The office space is approximately 300 square feet. It's just shy of 10 by 20. Or sorry, 200 square feet. Let me do my math. Which if what I recall is 1 per 325 square feet, you're looking at 1 additional space. That's 10 by my math. You have 8 shown. If you're going to add the seating, update the seating to 15, just add 2 parking spaces, and then that should cover us for the calculation. That'd be my recommendation. If James, as I'm leaning as
There's a
Just-
handicap parking space identified, so that's
Yep.
9 by my count on the
Yep.
plan, but it
Yeah.
also looks like there's space to the right of
the office,
the spaces in the line to
Yeah.
draw a couple more lines.
sure. That doesn't even impact your proposed parking and tree line, so.
This isn't going to be paved parking, is it? Yeah, so,
But we have to show on the plan that they can fit the number of cars.
yeah, I understand, but she's
Right.
not going to draw lines on the dirt.
No. Don't have to be designated unless she's really good about how to get paint to stick to rocks.
I'll pass.
Anyway, as far as the plans go, that would be something that would be my recommendations for possible conditions would be to update the proposed seating in the cafe and to add indicate enough parking spaces by the minimum requirements of the calculation.
If there's
I
going to be.
do that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. If I do that and bring that to the your office on Monday, you said that your next meeting is next Thursday.
Correct.
So I could potentially get the approval for the office next week, and then pending the septic installation and so forth in the spring, be able to open the cafe.
And you would not even need to have those drawings updated by next Thursday. Well,
Well, I mean, I just
This-
didn't get them
this-
done.
right, sure. If you want to get them done, that's the best thing for it. But there are conditions of approval. We can, if the board agrees and approves it with those conditions, you just have to meet the conditions. Once they're met, town staff will certify that they're met. I'll come in and that all the copies are there. I'll come in and sign it. So it does not have to be done by next Thursday.
So one of the other conditions that I have on that we typically require prior to the signing of plans is the driveway permit. Where we normally either require a new driveway permit or a written confirmation from DOT that you don't need one. Have you been in touch with DOT District 6 yet?
Well, I did. So initially I called DOT in Concord, and they were kind of like, didn't really understand why I needed something because it's been there for so long. But regardless, they told me about District 6. That's where I heard about that. So I
Yep.
called there, and a gentleman answered and said it was online, change of use. So I went online and I couldn't find a change of use. All I could find was a new application. So I went to call him back. He didn't answer. So then I called the state back, and I dropped the ball at that point because she basically said she didn't know why I would need it. If I had any problems, give her a call back, and I never did. So the state in Concord was saying they didn't understand why I needed it because it had been there forever. District 6, I was unable to reconnect with him, and I couldn't find what he had told me to fill out online.
Do I have your email? It should be with the application, right? I'll send an email copying a District 6 engineer, and hopefully that'll get the ball rolling.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Regardless of what, well, and I'm regardless, separate from what Linda said, though, from the driveway permit perspective, the difference is essentially adding seating
Correct.
Yeah.
from a use.
Well,
So,
the
Yep,
other
go ahead.
issue is that Division 6 did approve those driveways to be separated. And there were different driveway upgrades based on that subdivision. So that will need to be clarified through Division 6.
oh,
I-
that's
That
the 19, I think 19 dash whatever number case.
19-8.
I understand that I still have to do that letter, and I apologize for not doing it sooner, that once this is all approved, we're reneging on the subdivision. We don't want to subdivide it. We want to keep it as a mixed use.
Right.
So with that being a given, is that going to affect the driveway permit? Because it wouldn't be changing.
I don't think so, but I think once you draft that letter, I would send it to both us and DOT to make sure that they have a copy. It's more that they understand we're reverting to the prior design, and then it's their jurisdiction to decide what has to happen to make that work.
All right. Okay, so that's as it stands now, that's all I need to do, right? Is you're going to send me the email for the District 6 and I'll follow up on that and then write up the letter to revert to the prior design for the driveway and negate the subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll put the information on the, did I get the waiver for the, am I going to
I
get
haven't
the
made that
waiver?
decision yet.
Okay, all right,
That's what I'm about to address.
okay.
I'm just looking through the list. Okay, yep. What's the, as far as the waiver goes to provide a hand-drawn scale or waiving the scale notice? I'm just looking at your drawing again. Well, I won't speak for the board without their authorization, but I think most of them will agree that it looks like you could determine a scale for that drawing just based on, the 22 feet of the proposed cafe seating and the length of that line. That would get you something effective. It's on the other side of the room. I would pull up my scale if I had it handy. Because we like to have a scale drawing, even if it's fairly rough. And you've already got to make changes to the plan. Is that something, James, we could do? Town staff could do?
I'm looking on the GIS right now with the measuring tool to see if I can find something that's a nice round number.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm thinking is maybe just, if,
I think it'd be better to put something on, even if it's not exact.
Yeah.
Just so that,
We're not looking to degrees of accuracy.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would the septic design show that?
Ooh. They'll give you some dimensions, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, you actually, when the guy comes out to survey exactly where the tank's going to go and stuff, you could just ask him.
Yep.
He could help you with that and give you the number.
Well, just to clarify, septic designs are not, that they all have disclaimers that say they are not surveyed and not drawn to scale, although
Right.
they're close as can
Well, they
be.
aren't drawn to scale, but when they dimension out where the corners of the septic tank need to go, those are exact dimensions.
But that's not going to give the plan
No.
the scale. I mean, it's going to be better than than not having it, but the parking spaces may not be drawn
Yeah.
9 by 18 and all that is all I'm
Well,
saying.
To be honest, Linda, I'm not even, what I'm looking for is to figure out the, proposed cafe seating 9, that length of that line, the, unit number 3, if you want to call it that, is shown as 22 feet long. That's the scale right there that I'm looking at. And that's all I would like to see, is to say scale is approximately, 1 inch equals, 15 feet. I'm going to see if I can find my ruler, which must have dropped down behind my desk.
So I'm also measuring that driveway from the curved point to the opposite end of the driveway as being about 25 feet. Probably the easiest way to put a scale on it is just to put a scale bar and have that length, that bar is 25 feet.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we've got it. And then we don't need the waiver.
Yep.
So I can just use the print that I submitted previously and just put that on there.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, the scale is actually, according to my calculations, if you want to call it, 1 inch equals 22 feet. Because the length of the 22-foot line, well, the proposed cafe seating is 22 feet. It's 1 inch long. The next one over, proposed cafe, is 1 1/8, 1 1/4, and it's 22 feet as well. So, but yes, James, was a scale bar of saying the length of that line is 25 feet would be adequate.
Okay.
I think if you put a note on there, say scale is approximate, it's also fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's just me not trying to tell you how to do it. Go ahead.
If I could bring up one other thing, and I don't know if the applicant wants to address it now or at a later time, but the town currently has addressed outdoor dining on a temporary basis through the Board of Selectmen. And the idea was to help people get through the current COVID situation. But if it's something that you want to have on there long-term, as far as having a specific area for outdoor dining, it should probably be designated on that plan. And then if the board approves that location,
Yep.
then you wouldn't have to deal
Come
with
back in
having
the future.
come back later.
And I appreciate you bringing that up because as you did earlier today, I was thankful for that because I did want to do outdoor seating just on the porch. We wanted to have probably like 4 bar stools out there with like a counter on the rail. But I would incorporate that into the 15 seats, even though that would be seasonal, obviously. So my thought was to have like go back and forth. I don't know if that's allowed, but say have 11 seats inside, 4 seats outside, or 10 and 5, or however that works, to incorporate some outdoor seating on the porch area for a total of 15. But then our thought, because it's such a beautiful area there with the acreage, not that we were going to serve outside, but we talked about having a little sitting area. So people had takeout, they could go and sit in a nice area with plants and bushes and things. Like we were going to landscape an area that people could just go mingle and hang out, but not specifically seating areas because nobody would be served there. So I don't know if that's allowed.
Yeah, I think what we would want to make sure that our bases were covered would be for you to just draw a little rectangle on the plan and say, this is where there would be outdoor seating. If you wanted to go so far as to clarify, this is going to be tables and chairs only, no table service or anything like that, you can. But as long as you're showing us, the general area where that's going to occur, that would satisfy any of that. If it's seasonal only, you did it part of the year, you took the tables back inside, that would all be covered.
Perfect. All right, I like that. Thank you.
Just a note, I know the building from the outside, but none of your plans indicate that you have a porch.
Oh,
So,
right.
looking
Right, and I don't know.
specifically at maybe the second page from the end of your plan set, you have where you show the layout of the three buildings or the three modules. You just have the windows and the door for the food prep area and the door to the seating area. So
All right, I will correct that.
okay. That makes your case or your plan set more consistent.
I can get all that together and drop it off Monday. Only because I don't want to leave it hanging.
Right. Okay, but that still does not address how the board wants to handle the scale bar.
If we get a scale bar, we don't need the waiver.
Okay.
I don't think.
I agree. I just wanted to double check. Okay. Is the board amenable to that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will, actually how does that happen? If the applicant has withdrawn the waiver or we take no action on it, or?
I think you can just take no action. You've determined as a board that it's not needed. And by approving the application without approving the waiver, you're essentially stating that it's approvable without granting the waiver.
Yep. Okay. Just double checking. Want to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Yep.
Okay. So, and I think, did we receive any communications from anyone other on this as far as the public hearing goes?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So, and we need to deal with the revocation of 19-9 after this case, correct? Or as part of it?
I would feel most comfortable if it was a condition of approval.
Okay.
If you're going to wait on a decision until next week, if it's possible for us to have that letter before next week, that would be ideal for me. Otherwise, I can put it on as a condition precedent. But we would like to have that formally revoked by the board.
I will bring it all in on Monday.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do you have enough information to proceed for next week, James, as far as stuff from the board? We know what the applicant needs to bring in. Do we need to take any other action aside from a continuance?
I believe we are set for tonight unless the board has other questions.
What's this is this month's. I believe it's this month. Did we get this? Or I'm thinking where we are with the 65-day clock. I think we're within it.
You
fine.
accepted this as complete at the second meeting last month.
Okay. So we should be good. So we will continue this to next week.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk to you then.
You still need a motion by the board to continue to
No, we do.
the date and time certain.
No. Okay. Somebody want to do that?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay. We'll give the motion to
Second.
Tim and the second to Hal. Selected by at random. Any discussion? Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please, on continuing this to next week.
Yep. Lee,
Yes.
You said Lee, but that was Tim.
Oh, yes.
okay. Okay, Tim,
Is that me this time?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Al
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay.
It confused me.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next week then. Thank you. Okay. And last but not least is 20-7 Northwood Veterinary Hospital. Welcome back. I will open case 20-7. And we did, well, let me ask again, town staff, have we received any communication on this case?
not to my knowledge.
Okay,
I haven't.
you have not.
I have not.
To be clear then, I will open the public comment section of case 20-7. If you are present in this meeting and would like to comment, please do so, get my attention somehow. Not seeing or hearing anything, I will close public comment on case 20-7. Okay. We did not address the waivers yet. And essentially, this is, the waiver is to,
So, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair, I
right.
recommended if the board is amenable to acting on just the single waiver as requested by the applicant, the language that I suggest for the motion is the granting of a waiver to section Roman numeral 4C, minimal impact application, to allow the minimal impact application to apply to a proposed site plan that meets all 14 criteria, but which proposes expansion of a building.
thank you. I was trying to come up with a succinct way of saying that, but you beat me to it, which is good.
I think he practiced beforehand.
That's what we
It
pay him.
helped having it written out.
Yes. I just couldn't find it in the text beforehand. So,
So moved.
so moved. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Kreider, second by Mr. Jandeber to assume,
That wasn't Tim.
well, there,
I
I
heard
had
both
two,
of you.
you were both of
Oh,
you.
okay.
I heard both of you. Tim had a quarter second on you, Lee.
Okay, fine.
And I assume that the motion and second are to approve the waiver request.
Yes.
Okay. Discussion on approving the waiver? Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote then.
Tim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Nicely done. Thank you. And that's one of those, I think, not to put politics into it, but it's like the 50% plus one vote out of multiple millions, you know. Either we do one waiver, they're just over the bar from minimal impact if we if we don't approve the waiver, and that's a way of saving us a good bit of reverse waivering. Okay, we did regional impact. We talked about the proposed expansion. State and local permits. Have we heard anything from DOT District 6 as far as a driveway?
I haven't. They
They're not
usually only
changing the
reach out
traffic,
to
are
me
they?
when they have questions.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing.
This is just a building expansion, right? No
Right.
change in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no change in the driveway.
Yeah.
So would
I
there,
think we can negate that because there's no impact. Well,
Because there's no increase. I mean, there's no.
yeah,
It's not a change of use. They have stipulated that there's no increase in traffic. I think that is, I think it's basically up to the board if you want to be more formal and make sure that, you know, we've touched all of our bases. You could require the written confirmation from them that they're denying jurisdiction. They don't need an update. For things where it seems pretty obvious that there's not going to be a change, we have in the past not required that, sort of on the understanding that if we're moving forward, it's the applicant assuming that we're going to be able to move forward by not checking in.
well, I mean, there's no changes to the driveway. There's no changes. The building doesn't impact any parking or traffic flow to
right.
that effect.
So if it were me, I would be surprised if they required one. But again, it's up to the board as to whether you feel more comfortable having that explicit piece of paper saying so, or whether you feel confident enough to move forward on this.
Anybody have an opinion?
Well, are we talking about the driveway permit or
Correct.
just in general?
Driveway permit.
Well, I thought we discussed this a little bit last week where we said that they've already, from the previous approval, defined the number of cars and customers and all that. And nothing's changing. And if it does, then, you know, then there's enforcement action. But if nothing's changing, I'm having trouble seeing why the permit has to be revisited.
That's why I'm asking for opinions.
Oh, okay. My opinion is we don't need to revisit.
If the board would prefer not to require that condition, I would just strike number 2.
Yep.
So our 2 conditions of approval would be number 1, the applicant will revise the plan to ensure that all aspects of a minimal impact title block are included. So again, that was the date that I think the main thing I was missing was the date that the plan was last revised. And then number 2, deliver 3 copies of the plan signed by the applicant to the town for signature.
Yep. Anybody else have an opinion? Okay, I'll assume silence means assent. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So back on 1020 review comments by town planner on page 2, number 3, state and local permits, it says that typically the board requires either an updated driveway permit, and I don't see any reason for that, or written confirmation from New Hampshire DOT District 6 indicating that no permit is necessary. It seems like that's what we should do, to me, just to cover our rear ends.
That okay?
Like I said, that would be if you wanted to be more careful and more formal. I think that if there was going to be an issue where DOT did want to require a driveway permit on this, they would be enforcing against the applicant, not against us. So the applicant would be taking the risk by not checking in, essentially, that things are going to go smoothly without needing an updated driveway permit. As I said, I would be surprised if they required one, but I'm not officially allowed to say on DOT's behalf that it's not required.
And
I'm missing something here.
Go ahead, Tim.
To have a written confirmation, that's what you said, that
Yep.
the board requires either an updated driveway or written confirmation from NHDOT District 6 indicating that no such permit is necessary. I'm just reading your words.
Right. And I was reading.
Yes, and that was Hal was questioning whether even that was necessary.
Right.
Yeah, because
I guess I voiced it that I think it is.
So Tim's believes an updated request would be appropriate. Hal is against. Lee, do you have an opinion?
I think we should probably get to see if they need it or not. I wouldn't see why they would, but I think we should get an opinion.
Okay.
okay. I would just want to make sure I understand what James wrote. I'm interpreting as this. You either need to get a driveway permit or you need to demonstrate via DOT that you don't need one. It all has to do with whether or not a driveway is acceptable to the state there. And so I'm not looking at that as, two different choices. I'm looking at that as one choice, confirm driveway. And since this driveway already exists and it's already in place and already approved by DOT, I'm struggling with the concept of asking them to go back, but if the others want to be more conservative, I guess that's fine. But am I missing something in terms of their previous application would have required the same thing, a driveway permit or a letter from the DOT saying none is needed? Am I missing something there?
Can I speak for a minute?
Go ahead, Linda.
When you say previous application, which previous application are you referring to?
When the building originally went in.
Or was last modified.
Or last modified.
Well, it's only been in recent years that DOT has required and has asked the town to have applicants submit for change of use or and when this was put in, if you want to go way back to the beginning, which I'm not saying that it's necessary, but it was put in originally as an office building and probably had 6 cars a day as opposed to however many they have today. So I think the idea that the board members were saying is just run it by DOT to make sure that they're comfortable with continuing the approval as it is and how it sets.
So Linda, are you saying that DOT may not have at this point formally reviewed it on a prior occasion?
Well, they did back 40 years ago when it was put in, but when the building was built, but they have not. I can tell you because I look back and the planning board waived a change of use when it went from a prior use to the veterinary hospital.
Okay, so they waived it.
Not reviewed at that time either. So
right. So then this use was not confirmed yet.
No, that use was never confirmed by DOT.
Okay, well then in that case, I agree. I agree with Tim.
Okay.
But it's certainly not a change of use now. However, giving DOT the courtesy to say, thank you for asking us, but they may come back and suggest some modifications, but
no, if you're saying that we've never really sent to DOT a request to review this as a vet hospital,
That's correct.
Yeah, then my argument doesn't hold water because I was under the assumption that that was already approved.
Not as a vet hospital.
Okay, well then we need to.
Okay.
In my mind.
So we can add that to the condition then.
The Board of Selectmen did sign a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Transportation, and they have asked us to, when we do site plans, to give them the opportunity to look at these on the state highway.
No, I don't disagree with the concept. I was under the misconception that a prior planning board approval would have caught this. And what you're saying is the most recent one that changed it to a vet clinic was waived. So it wasn't ever checked.
That's correct.
Okay. So this would be a courtesy to them. And if I recall correctly, that last time when we made the change, there was no calculated traffic difference or parking, traffic difference, but well, wouldn't have been anyway. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's bygones.
And certainly the applicant can go forward to DOT and explain that they are not increasing the traffic over what's there now.
Sure. I think the only difference might be the frequency or the times of peak travel. You're moving from an office where, depending on the use of the office, employees show up at 8 to 4 or whatever the time is, and then essentially from arriving at rush hour to spread throughout the day. But again, that depends on what the function of the office is. Anyway, you'll still need to contact DOT. Okay. What else do we have that is outstanding? We agreed to the waiver. I think we're into conditions. Did we receive any communications from town staff or on this one? Did I already ask that?
You did, and we said no.
I think you did.
Okay, sorry. I thought I did. I just like to make sure I cover my bases. It's not necessarily senility. Okay. So I'm down to 2 proposed conditions of approval.
3 now, if we're going back
Okay,
to the driveway
3.
permit or confirmation. So the conditions as proposed, again, are all prior to the signing of plans. Number 1, the applicant will revise the plan to ensure that all aspects of the minimal impact title block are included, including but not limited to adding the date that the plan was last revised. Number 2, the applicant will acquire and provide copies of all necessary federal, state, and local permits, including but not limited to either an NHDOT driveway permit or written confirmation from NHDOT District 6 that no such permit is necessary to accommodate the proposed expansion. And number 3, deliver 3 copies of the plan signed by the applicant to the town for signature.
So I just find DOT District 6, like on DOT website?
Yeah, their office is in Durham.
Okay. Easy.
And I'm sure James could shoot you an email with a contact person or number if need be.
Yep.
Since I think we just did that for the last application.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay. Anybody? I would entertain a motion for approval with conditions as read.
So
I'll
moved.
do it if you want. Motion to approve the 3 conditions just read by the town planner.
Okay. A little bit of a computer delay, so we'll give it to Hal with a second by Tim.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. But thank you for clarifying, Tim. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Susan will do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. You're approved. You should get a notice of decision fairly soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Look forward to see you in the new hospital.
Yes.
I think it'll be nice. Yeah.
No, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take care.
You too.
Okay. And we have, under the revised agenda, a preliminary consult.
That's to tip you off for next week.
Oh, for next week. Okay. That's
Yes,
what I was
doesn't it
wondering.
say for review only?
Sorry, say what?
I thought I wrote for review only or whatever.
Oh.
You did, but I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
Okay.
I don't know what to say anymore.
Preparation for next week.
Confusing everybody.
That's good because I didn't get the plan set in the mail. I got the emails application, but
Yeah,
Everybody go into-
they got out. I forgot about the holiday in the middle of the week, so you
Oh,
should be
that's
good.
okay. that was not a complaint.
Bob,
Just an observation. Go ahead, Hal.
may I ask a question on that? I know we're not going to discuss it per se, but just a general question. They use a different calculation for number of units that can be on that land, and was based on elderly housing. Do we have other similar provisions for other situations? I know we have.
I believe we have 3 residential density calculations. One is our standard one that applies to all housing unless it counts as something else. One is the elderly housing
Right.
density calculation. And the third is the open space density calculation, because that housing will be denser within the application, and we're putting the open space all off to one side.
And we did just see that not that long ago.
So those are the only distinctions that we have. There was a bill, the governor introduced 2 housing bills in this session of the legislature. They both died over procedural reasons, but we're expecting them to be reintroduced in the fall, especially now that the governor was reelected. One of those is looking at regulations as they relate to affordable housing. And that provision in the original bill says that if there is any benefit that you give to age-restricted senior housing, it must apply to all housing. That was, I think in the amendment, it was changed to it must apply to affordable housing. So that may be something that we would want to look at next year if that bill passes, depending on what those circumstances are, because it could be adding that benefit to other categories. But for right now, we just have those 3 ways of dealing with that.
Okay, good to know. Okay, internal business.
James, I don't know if you have anything, but I'd like to discuss the letter from the building inspector.
Okay, go ahead.
Did everybody have an opportunity to read that?
Yep.
Hal's muted.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Can you give me a date or a time on that?
Yes,
It was sent out today, this before around noontime.
11/27 today. Internal business was the title or the subject. I thought that was carefully crafted, and it definitely, I think it meets the intent.
I'll just give a quick overview. Basically on RSA 674-41, it gives the planning board it's a requirement that the planning board reviews and comments on applications for building permits under this statute. If the building permit is on a property that doesn't meet specific criteria, such as being on a maintained road or having been on a street of a previously approved subdivision by the planning board. So many of you will probably recall having seen these where you review and comment back to the Board of Selectmen whether or not you have comments on a particular road. So what the building inspector brought forward, and it's been an ongoing concern or problem since the guidelines for the Board of Selectmen were changed back several years ago, because the threshold for small residential improvements was very high. So we presented a draft to the Board of Selectmen. They reviewed it. It was sent to town council, and they agreed Tuesday night unanimously to change their guidelines to have 2 levels of process for applications to build. And the ones on, let's say, tier 1 would be remodeling of a residence, could be accessory decks, different things like that. That would be for a residence that's already, or a seasonal property that's already on a class 6 or private road, and that would not increase the traffic to that road. And that's the basis of that statute. Tier 2 would be when, as examples, an undeveloped lot where traffic would be new to that road, or a seasonal to year-round conversion where there are no year-round houses beyond that seasonal unit. That would be in tier 2. So what the building inspector is asking for is for the planning board to also consider the concept of having 2 tiers for their review and comment on these applications. The first one would be on the lower level, on the minor residential changes, would be instead of someone having to fill out an application. Did Hal leave the room? Oh, there he is.
Nope, he's back.
Yeah, I need to step away, but I still can't find that, so I'm not sure if I was copied on it.
It went to the planning board, so you should have received it to the group email, and you're on it.
Yeah, you're only.
Who was it sent by, please?
It was sent by me.
Oh, I was looking for Scott's email. Okay. Sorry, Linda.
Today,
No,
11/27.
I'm sorry.
So, go ahead.
What date was that, please?
Today at 11:27 a.m.
Okay, I'll find it.
What the suggestion is, or the recommendation is, to have 2 levels of review and comment. The first level with the minor ones would be to expedite these, rather than have somebody come in and they want to increase the height of the doorway going into their property, rather than them having to wait a month to the first of the month, submit a application to the planning board, wait till the planning board reviews it and then sends it back. Those would be handled in-house by What he's suggesting is a technical review committee that would address those, consisting of 5 people. It would be the building inspector, land use specialists, or if I was unavailable, certainly Susan could fill that in. Road agent or highway foreman, the 2 chiefs of fire and police, and James suggested the idea also of having a member of the planning board on that subcommittee if someone was interested, and it would ultimately require a change to your procedures to include it. However, there's a number of these that he has right now that are sitting there waiting and have been waiting through the process of the selectmen acting on this, and folks that are hoping to be able to get some small projects finished up before the brunt of winter comes on. So he's asked for the board to consider the smaller ones on a temporary basis be handled in-house.
So Linda, I thought up a few more things if this is a good time.
Sure.
I'd suggest where it refers to the people who the technical review subcommittee would consist of, considering doing departments instead, especially if you're
oh, that's excellent. Yes, good.
If you want me or Susan to be able to fill in for you, have it be the building department, the land use department, highway, fire, and police.
Right. Yeah, we did that actually before when we had the original technical review committee, which has been defunct for a number of years. The fire chief designated someone else to sit in that committee to do that. So that, that's
I know in
point.
Dover, there's a sergeant whose primary job is, the traffic and the TRC and all of that. So it's not the chief that they use.
Yeah,
and,
that's excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
My other, I guess, sort of questions are more related to where one thing ends and another begins. So if this is going to be, if some of this language is going into a policy, potentially some clarification. I'm assuming that an accessory dwelling unit would be under the more intensive review. So the bullet that says additional residential units on a lot, if we said including accessory dwelling units, that would make it clear that just because it's an accessory, it doesn't bump it into the first category. The second question is the home business permits that I have the authority to issue without planning board approval. Those are technically non-residential uses. So
you're right. Yeah.
I would interpret under this that those would fall under the more intensive one as well. If that's what we're intending, I'd suggest the non-residential use, including home business permits, to be explicit.
Yeah, that's a good point. As far as additional residential units, I thought that would cover the ADUs, but I think anytime we clarify something and make it more direct, it's only better. So that's not subject to interpretation.
Yeah, my only concern is because we're talking about accessory residential structures. It does say uninhabited, but yeah, I wouldn't want somebody to see accessory and make a link and get confused.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Okay.
They've adopted their guidelines, so, but I think we can certainly clarify the difference for ourselves. We're not going to be able to, unless the Board of Selectmen decides they want to amend and go back through it again. But I think if the if the technical review committee clarifies, I mean, through that process of addressing it that way, it would be handled, you know, in-house that way.
Yeah, or if in recording, since that's a subset of the planning board's policies, if in recording what rules the TRC was going to play by, we also included their codification of this, then it would essentially be in the planning board policies that's how the planning board is interpreting the difference.
Right, exactly. Yeah, all of that could be built into the actual procedures of the planning board, and then there would be no question. And the guidelines that were adopted by the Board of Selectmen did have the option planning board / technical review for the lower tier and planning board only for the more involved, the traffic generators. So that's already taken care of there. It's just a matter of the planning board agreeing to allow that to happen for the planning board.
So really it's a question of how is the planning board going to comment? Would you prefer to keep seeing all of these individually, or would you prefer to also delegate your comments to a TRC? And if the answer to that is yes, would you like a planning board member to have a seat on it?
For me, yes, and I also think maybe a
Go ahead,
member of
Tim.
the public.
You are all members of the public.
Yep.
So those TRC meetings would need to function under 91A. They would need to be noticed as, well, the TRC is not actually approving them. The building inspector is approving them.
It would depend on how that information gets provided to, if we were sitting down having a meeting, then we'd have to
If they
notice
sat
it.
down together, it would need minimum 24-hour notice like any other public meeting. 674-41 approvals right now do not require a public hearing. So even if you had them at the planning board meeting, the public is not entitled to speak regarding the application. But I don't see a way to delegate authority to a general member of the public who is not affiliated with a town board in some capacity. I think that would be giving authority to somebody who has no formal affiliation with the town. I think the way for a member of the public who wanted to take that authority on would be to become a regular or alternate member of the planning board, or whatever other board would conceivably have a seat on the TRC. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
It does make sense. I just like to see the community involved. There's probably not even 12 of us in the entire town that are very interested in this particular discussion, and I'll be one of them because I live on a Class 6 road, and I think some of the rules are ridiculous. But anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, so I think I'm all for the transparency and making sure that the public has access to the proceedings. I think when it comes to somebody who's taking an official stance on behalf of the town as an entity, I think that needs to be a board member, because you have all sworn an oath that you are people who will make decisions on behalf of the town as an entity.
The other side of it is, and I understand that Tim may feel that having someone from the outside present a different perspective could be helpful. Someone could do that anyway. I mean, all of the TRC people are providing, let's say it is a meeting in public and for whatever reason, 3 of the people are saying and there's 5 people or 7 people on this committee are saying to the building inspector, no, you should not approve this without A, B, or C. That's one thing. But if it's just a matter of those people, which it may end up, knowing how difficult it is to get all these people together in one room frequently enough with all the other work that they have to do, it may be a matter that it would come down to the building inspector sending out the information to the members and saying individually they could respond. And then he could take those responses and make a decision, which is my guess is how it will ultimately end up. But you would get the input from the different departments to the building inspector on these minor residential that do not increase traffic to the other side to it. The only thing that the building inspector can do if he's not comfortable with issuing that permit would be to send it to the Board of Selectmen. So it doesn't really
that was
anywhere.
my other thought was, I think some boards that grant their technical review committees approval authority over minor permits, I think sometimes they have escalating clauses in those policies where the board, where if they're approving a minor site plan or something the equivalent of one of our changes of use or minimal impact, a board member who feels that that really does need to be reviewed by the board could object and kick it up. So I don't know that there's the flexibility in that, but set in the policy. But the flip side of that is the only thing that we're authorizing specially is the expedited thing. So I don't think that there would be much of a challenge if Scott said, hey, I feel that this one is really weird and I want this to see the light of day at planning board and select board. But the way I'm reading this, nobody else besides Scott, who has the permit issuing authority, would be able to say, yes, we need to talk about this at a meeting.
Yeah, that was my interpretation of it as well, that it's largely the TRC is feedback to Scott to make the decision.
Yep.
Or the building inspector to make the decision.
Yeah.
Whether it gets kicked up to a higher elected board.
Excuse me a second. Is Scott the building inspector?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out who Scott was.
Yep.
Scott
Sorry.
was-
I should have mentioned it was building inspector.
Thank you.
The only scenarios that I can see that could be possibly problematic would be where an expansion, like let's say somebody wants to even just do something like do a small addition or add a 3-car garage to, and a mile in on a class 6 road or a private road that is, they happen to live there and they're perfectly happy with it. But the fire chief says, oh, you know, we could probably get the truck in there, but we're gonna need a turnaround or
again.
something.
Yeah.
And we gotta be able to get out. So I suggest to the building inspector that you not approve this, that you ask for further comment from the planning board, and then it could, be kicked up to the Board of Selectmen for a final decision.
So what happens if the TRC comment is no way and Scott denies it?
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to think of a.
Well,
say that again.
Is that denial of a permit appealable directly to ZBA?
Correct. Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm trying to think of something, the opposite situation with the TRC, where a few members of the TRC say this needs to go to planning board, and Scott says, no, it doesn't. I'm going to approve it anyway. What's the applicant gets satisfaction, I guess, in that case, but that information isn't kept from, or not kept from the board, but the action is, there's no chance to review by a higher authority. Is that a situation that, I'm trying to think of situations where that would occur.
Well, let me say this. You only have authority to review and comment. You do not have authority to make a decision.
Correct.
So the decision is either made by the Board of Selectmen or their agent, the building inspector.
Yeah.
So if he denies access to you, well, I can tell you, there hasn't been one come to the planning board in over a year.
Right. It's been a while.
So we're trying to get this back on track so that they're all processed the way they should be processed. I'm sure there are numbers of them that have fallen through the cracks in between COVID and not having building inspectors. We want to get it going in a direction where there's a process that can be followed.
I'm just wondering if
the two options, or I guess sort of three options, would be, since planning board comment is a required part of, or at least planning board opportunity for comment is a required part of the process. You could have a seat on the committee and appoint somebody to represent the board on that individual issue. And so by having that planning board member there and commenting, you have commented. Or if the TRC is conceivably going to meet as frequently as twice a month, that twice a month could be scheduled for the weeks after your workshop and regular meeting, so that every time we get one of these, it needs to be on your agenda the week before TRC meets. You comment, it goes to TRC. Or the third possible option would be, if we think that this is going to function largely via email, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I'm not entirely sure about. Then they would just need to notify the entire planning board of what they've got every time they get something. Forward the permit or the 2 permit applications to planning board all, and members can send comments.
Which, well,
I have to admit, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of this happening entirely via email, with the fire chief and the police chief and land use all just sending Scott an email saying, here are our comments, go ahead. I mean, he is the one who is set up with the authority after comment by all of them, so that may be our out. But that seems like it is, I'm not really liking right now how that would potentially interact with 91A. And by talking about this as a committee, as TRC as an entity that is reviewing these, that feels like a committee that has to have public meetings that need to be accessible. People who can't make the meeting can send an email and somebody can add their comments to the record and to the minutes, but
I think that's a reasonable approach. And Scott and I today talked about the idea of, say, let's say the second and fourth Monday of every month at 9 a.m. have a 10-minute meeting if needed. I mean,
yep,
just to keep these permits moving along so they're not,
yeah, the vast majority of those wouldn't be needed and would be canceled.
Right. So I think that if we have a recurring, very specific time frame, the fire chief and the police chief and the highway foreman are aware of that, and somebody can't be there, or they can send somebody in their place, or however it's supposed to work, then I think that's doable. I certainly can, work to make that happen.
So what do you need from the board?
Well, it would need a vote from the board that you would allow these smaller ones to, I would definitely, I would.
Do we need to have that in the meeting procedures?
I would support his request, if you want to do it for 60 days or 90 days, to issue these on a temporary basis, that you will approve this. Because we have a number of people that have been waiting several months. We have one that's a deck. The contractor's already got the material and then finds out that they got to do this. And there's people that are trying to button up their house, changing a doorway. I hate to see them, get bumped back any further. The selectmen did an outstanding job to move the process along and send it to legal and have it back and hold a public hearing on it. And I'd like to keep the momentum to be able to accommodate the people in town that need to get some small minor projects done.
I don't think anybody's questioning that. I think it's a question of.
Oh, definitely we need to do it procedurally and change our procedures to accommodate that. And for that, we would definitely be looking at James with his expertise on doing that.
So
something we can do tonight, or does James need to draft something?
We can't change the procedures tonight. But I think what we could do, we could make a motion to one, conceptually agree with the process as agreed to by, or as approved by the Board of Selectmen, to task staff with updating the planning board procedures in a way to put this into effect, and the option of Part 3, task the departments mentioned as members of the technical review committee with processing all 67441 applications received by today in accordance with this policy. So that's giving them a formal go-ahead of, hey, if it would fall under staff approval once the procedures are done, just do them now.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
So the only question that I think was still up for discussion was related to the departments and whether the planning board would like a formal seat on the TRC. I think you should agree to that as part of this. Because if we're just going to clean house on the ones that we've got right now, then you should also task somebody to be part of the process for that clearinghouse.
Yeah, the question is who
and how.
I thought I heard Tim volunteer for that.
Oh, okay, good. Good. Well, that settles it then. I'll amend my motion to include that.
I'm fine with it.
We don't have to name you specifically, but as long as we have somebody, I think.
I would like to have two comments on that is, first of all, you list them by department as opposed to positions.
Yeah.
And include the planning board in there, or a representative of the planning board.
Yeah, but my concern about adding the planning board was if we don't have people that are willing to do it, then it doesn't make sense to include them. But if we have somebody that's at least initially willing to start, I think that's great.
Yep. Yeah, and I was, when I read this, I was thinking along the lines of the right to know and how it would be convenient to have it done electronically through email. But I don't think that misses some of the conversations that can be had between members if there are disagreements but I think without a essentially circuit breaker to force a review, I'd rather have the planning board on as a seat.
Yeah.
So
that I amended my motion.
Okay. And the second?
Yep.
Okay. Further discussion on it? Do we want to put a time frame on when this goes into effect, or essentially limited,
the formal procedures would need
to have it in place?
The formal procedures, we would need to come back to you with something, and make any changes.
And approve them.
And then we need to, I guess if we've made no changes, that could be the first reading, and then we would need a second reading at the next meeting. Right. And I think there's maybe a 1% chance that I would have the time to do that for next week.
So how do we
So we're looking at probably 2 December discussions.
No.
So, okay. Then I'm okay with December.
What do we do with the ones that are backed up? Do they have to wait?
No, that's part 3. That they're going to go ahead and do this with some sort of reasonable procedures in accordance with 91A, and then we'll write up something formal.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're not further discussion on the concept.
No, it's not concept, it's a motion.
Or motion, true, whatever. Yeah.
Because we're going to approve it, hopefully.
Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Hal?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for volunteering, Tim.
Definitely. Okay. Anything other internal business?
Bob, I have one question.
Yep.
We got that letter today, I believe via Jim or via Linda, I'm not sure, from Ms. Mancini. Or,
Manzelli.
Yeah,
yeah,
Mazzelli.
thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And I just would like to know, you know, we I assume have to be fair to all parties involved in this process. So I'm wondering at what point, if the applicant is saying he wants to delay indefinitely until we meet in person, is that pretty much the only option for them, and they just have to wait it out?
So I'm pretty sure I already mentioned this on the record when we discussed it last time. So the applicant is certainly entitled to request continuances for whatever reason they see fit.
Okay.
The board is not obligated to approve all requests for continuance.
Mhm.
So I don't want to talk about any details of that case
Right.
because it's not noticed for tonight, but
Right.
short version, if the board reaches a point that you no longer wish to continue any piece of business, you have the ability to go into deliberations and issue a decision on that case. So yeah, the board can continue to take those requests, consider the merits of the requests, but ultimately this is your review process that should be guided on whether or not you have the information that you need. So that generally applies to timeline, with the 60-day review clock and all of that, but I would say that also applies to format. If you decide that you feel comfortable rendering a decision on a case via Zoom, you have the ability to move forward and decide the case via Zoom. If you have the opinion that you need some other format, whether it's a site walk for an application, whether it's an in-person hearing, whether it's being able to physically tack up plans someplace, you can convene to a date and time and location certain. So Zoom in person now or next month, that's your decision. And if you get to the point that you don't want to continue honoring a request to continue, you don't have to.
Yeah, I guess I'm just bringing it up because I thought now, and maybe Linda with her, experience.
I'm going to interrupt for a minute if I could, and I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude, but we should probably stay away from this because it could appear that we're discussing Attorney Manzelli's request on a night that it's not posted to be heard.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Linda. Yeah.
I can say that having been in town hall for at least one meeting since it's been reconfigured, I need to get back in and take a look at how we can utilize that space. The Board of Selectmen did come up with recommendations on how we can use it. It's up to the chair to determine how meetings can proceed under those how planning board meetings can be used under those guidelines and whether we can use that space or not. And I'll take another look to see how that's done.
I just want to be fair to both parties, but also they need to get on with their lives too. So
the applicant also received a copy of the letter about 30 seconds after you did. I sent it over to them as well. Okay. So everybody has gotten that at this point.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, but Linda's right. It was more a hypothetical question, but obviously it was triggered by that letter. So let's hold off.
Okay.
And I believe Nope, we don't have a agenda posted for next week's already, so.
The
Yeah, we can-
only other item is zoning amendments. I don't know whether you've all had a chance to read through the wetlands overlay as I drafted it, whether you want to talk about that tonight.
Not really.
No.
But
really.
I would feel most comfortable if we held the first public hearing for that in December, which would mean if we're not going to talk about it tonight, we should
Talk about
be
it.
in a position next week that we are going to
Post it.
for a public hearing.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Makes
and
sense.
I think if that reminder is emailed out with maybe copy or final draft of it, that would be a way to do so, and we can put it on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Linda, are we going to receive formal comments from the Conservation Commission, or are they still deciding what
No,
and
they
how?
did. I thought those were sent to you. You did not receive them? I think I only
did
sent
not.
them to you. I did not send them to the board. I wanted you to look at them first.
Or if I did, I promptly clicked off of it and forgot about it.
Okay, I'll resend that.
If you could, that would be great.
Yep, please do.
Yes, they did. They met because of Election Day. They met a different night, and they did come up with a approved list of items that they would like for consideration.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, anything else?
Just to thank you for getting the updated assessment information onto the assessing website. That's good.
I don't know who you're thanking, but I think that was Carol that did it.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you were involved somehow because, you know, you always are involved with that type of stuff, but okay.
Well, I was involved only in the emails to get it, you know, in process. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
I
Well,
didn't actually do it.
I'm glad it's uploaded. It looks good.
Yes, yes,
looks
and
good.
Carol did that. She's,
Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. I was waiting for discussion. We'll do a roll call vote of anybody who disagrees. Speak now or hold your peace. Okay, I'll take that as assent. We're adjourned at 9:00.
Great.
Have a good night. Thank you all.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Linda, I've got a quick question about
Sure.
a constituent call.